What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Hopefully you guys are just going to go out and enjoy some sun and just live your life. It's a beautiful life. If you don't know who this is the Smiths, led by the famous Morrissey. Great song from the 80s. So, why am I playing this song? Because only the big mouth gets the attention. Only the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And sometimes the spirit world will make itself known by being that squeaky wheel. So there's stories all around us about hitchhikers from another dimension. So that's what we're going to call this podcast. Hitchhikers from another dimension. And they're not only in one specific area. They're in many specific areas, actually. We've got hitchhikers everywhere, from Chicago to Pennsylvania to Ohio to the Northwest, in Pacific Northwest. And today's hitchhikers will actually be alien hitchhikers. And they even stretch down to, Area 51. There's a really interesting story from down there where a very famous musician, well, I don't know, very famous, maybe a D-level musician, encountered an alien that was looking for directions to Area 51 with basically an aquarium tank on his head. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about all kinds of different things. We're talking about whether they're spiritual, spectral, whether they're alien, extraterrestrial, or simply another species from this earth, just asking for a hitch on a ride, just a free Uber, just a little bit of time in your car, right? Well, in Chicago, one of the most famous cases of all time, spectrally, is Resurrection Mary. I've personally driven past the Resurrection Cemetery where Mary has been seen hundreds of times, as real as a person as you and I, and asking for a ride to the ballroom down the street. You see, back in the early 1900s, Mary was a very famous woman who would go to the ballroom and dance. She was a socialite. She loved doing it. But unfortunately, she got ran over by a horse carriage and passed away. Ever since then, she's been asking for spectral rides for decades. And men have picked her up, or taxi cabs have picked her up, taken her out dancing, kissed her, and her lips felt cold, and brought her back home. She said, bring me back to the cemetery. Or she'll say, my home is just up here. And when they get towards the cemetery, she jumps out of the car. Or she doesn't jump out of the car. She disappears from the car. And then people see her behind the cemetery gates. This is not made up. This is reported by multiple witnesses. Okay? So, what are we talking about today? There's a special couple aliens that predicted I believe it's Mount Helen's explosion to a man back in 1980. So I'm going to pull that up, and I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like it because there's a lot to it. So let's pull this up and get down to the heart of the matter, right? Isn't that what what's his name says? Mr. Mr. Eagle himself, Don Henley. Well, let's take a look at it, shall we? So this comes to us from pnm.com, and this story was written in, and it states that in 1973, I met two very tall persons, about 8 to 12 feet tall, a man and a woman, on the side of Mount St. Helens. I went there as a prep trip to go canoeing at Spirit Lake, which is no longer there. Since it was March, I found the lake under the snowdrifts, and I went up to the top of the mountain to climb it. As I got out of my VW Super Beetle, Interesting. I wonder what a super beetle is. I was overcome by fear. Terror gripped me. Try as I might, I could not force myself to cross the parking lot to the beginning of the trail where a family was beginning their ascent. I could not move because the fear within me petrified my body. I then saw in my mind's eye, through the third eye, the mountain blowing up right underneath me. I saw the mountain and the rocks and the trees below me, all around me, being superheated and exploding into shreds. I shouted to the family to get out of there because the mountain was about to blow. They looked at me like I was some kind of nut or on drugs. I did not have long hair in the. Oh, I did have long hair in those days, as though that means you're doing drugs apparently. On the way down, I stopped at the lodge where I bought some beer from the owner, Harry Truman. I'm assuming it's not the president, uh, who made snide comments to me when I stopped to debate getting a bag of chips and buying some beer. I almost, without knowing, said to him that someday he would die up here on this mountain, but I didn't, and I left. Farther down the mountain, as I took a sharp turn on a corner, I passed two persons who were dressed in white robes. Now, that's weird in itself. In the 1973, if you're in white robes, chances are you're in a cult or something, right? But he says they were in white robes, and at first glance, I thought they were Hare Krishnas out for a hike. And being 20 miles from Toledo, Washington, I pulled over and I got out to offer them a ride home, or a ride into town. Immediately, two things happened. First, as I walked up to them, I realized that I had to look up at them as I was looking at the top of a basketball net. Now, that's high for most people. That realization freaked me out, but I love an adventure. As I walked up to them, I offered a gift from I offered to give them a lift as a gift to town. The woman then turned to me and said quietly, "I thought we were supposed to meet someone here." The man, who also had long hair, only slightly raised his hand in my direction to indicate that I was the contactee they were waiting for. The point was not lost on me. Next, a car pulled up and asked me if I was all right. Again, my senses told me that all was not normal at all. I knew the man and the carload of four persons, perhaps a man and his wife in the front seat and a daughter and son in the back, could not see the tall persons towering over me. I said that I was simply overtaken by the beauty of the scenery and I just had to get out and look at it. Very slowly, slowly, they drove away. I had covered for what seemed to be some imaginary persons just talking to me. But they were very real, very, very real. The woman again turned to the man and said, "He can see us," to which he replied, "He's in an altered state of consciousness." Then the man turned to me and said, "You deceived them?" Thinking that I had done them a favor for covering them, I did not really have any ready reply. I just said, "Hey, do you want to ride to town or not?" I was torn at this point because I knew about my reality in this dimension, and if they wanted to ride to town, well, then if they weren't from this dimension, it might be a very strange car ride. The man turned to the woman and said with a sweeping gesture towards the car, "Shall we?" So they walked to the car. I wanted to tell them about what happened at the top of Mount St. Helens. As they approached my super beetle, I knew that they were very, very tall. Not normally tall, but way taller and would not fit in my super beetle. If you guys know what a beetle is, you know it's a very small car. It's basically a two-seater with a little bench in the back. I said, "Maybe this isn't such a good idea." And then the man said, "We'll fit just fine." Before my eyes, those two began to shrink. The man got into the back seat along with the lady, in which our culture would usually get into the front, right? Well, after they got in, the man turned to the woman and said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I'm fine." How could they shrink? Well, we know from many reports that if you go into ships, alien ships, they can seem like they're 30 feet in diameter outside, and you get inside and it's the size of a football stadium inside. There's some sort of time dilation that they're able to do, or space dilation or something. And maybe they have that same technology for their bodies. So this gentleman stated, the one driving, the one who owned the Beetle, stated, "I needed a beer, so I opened a Bud. This was rural backwoods Washington State in 1973, and I offered them a beer too. Now I'll tell you, I had I had my car die on me when as I drove through really deep water, and it got up into the airflow and it killed my car. I got a ride home from two guys. They were my heroes, but they offered me beer too, and I was like, no, I'm good. And they just drank the beer the whole ride back to town, which was like 15, 20 minutes. I was terrified. So apparently these aliens were pretty much the same way. They said they said with their robes somewhat soiled, they had dirt marks and signs of wear. It looked like they had been hiking through the woods. I did not expect this from them, as I came to accept them as some kind of aliens or angels, but they looked really real. The guy had very long fingers. That's when I saw that, to my surprise, he had 6 fingers on his hands. That's interesting. Since I was driving at the time, the man said in a polite but commanding voice, "Turn around and watch the road." So he must have turned around and offered him a beer. To which I replied, as any young 20-year-old who had already totaled 3 cars doing stunts would say, "I'm good. I can drive and talk at the same time. No worries." And the alien said, "What are you drinking?" And the gentleman said, "It's a Bud." And the alien said, "What's that?" He said, it's beer, alcohol." And the alien said, "Alcohol? That's poison." My guest hesitated for a few seconds before he spoke again and said, "Alcohol is going to cause you a lot of problems in your lifetime." And he was right about that. I turned around again to scope out these two hitchhikers, and the young woman smiled. They both looked to be in their early 30s. She had long brown hair. His hair was as long as hers and was at least shoulder length. I said, "Toledo's 20 miles away. That would have been a pretty long walk," he said. And the alien said, "What were you doing on the mountain?" My mind was fighting with the thought now that I might just have two aliens who shapeshifted in size in the back of my car who had just chewed me out for drinking, and I was beginning to question my own reality. And what if they wanted to eat me or something? I told them all about my experience on the mountain and the feeling and the vision that I had, and that's when he began to give me specific details about the date and the time of the eruption on Mount St. Helens. He even told me how many people were going to die up there. About 60 to 70 people will die on that mountain when it erupts, the alien said. In fact, 68 people did die on May 18th, 1980. So, alien was right. 7 years later, I found myself working in Lewis County as a transporter for senior services. I had something to do with the red zone being established, but that's another story. I told so many predictions about the mountain that came true before the eruption that one grandma, just after it erupted, said, "You did it. You made the mountain blow up." The alien or whatever said something that triggered a repressed memory that I had. He said it would happen because of the flood that we had prevented that year. That's interesting. Then I began to feel really strange about this encounter. I was sure that he could not have known about the topographical map I had drawn in my cabin last year and how I had highlighted in blue everything in the state of Washington under 3,000 feet and written a short story about me and my family living on Mount St. Helens after the flood. Or could he know about it? "Who are you?" I asked. The woman leaned over and quietly, with her easy smile, asked him, "Should we tell him who we really are?" And he said, "No." Then he said to me, "We are watchers." You gotta like that, right? Maybe they're part of that base that's up there in Alaska that's supposed to be close to Mount St. Helens. Right about then, I knew I had stepped into a forest. I did not know the way through. The gentleman stated, I mean, what's your name?" And he said, "My name is," this is a tough one to pronounce, Jerusalem. Jerusalem. It's like 12 characters long. I said I would not be able to remember his name, and I didn't for 33 years. Then, in a dream, I heard his name as he had spoken it. And my name is Isyu, which is a lot smaller. ISYU. It's really easy to remember. Just think about it this way. Say, "Are you?" and you will remember it. I did remember it. Also, I read something unique about the name Issue and the significance behind the name, but again, I can't place what that importance is, you know? So, of all the wonderful questions I could have asked them, I failed to do so. I still beat myself up for letting the opportunity slip through the fingers of my hands out of primal fear of the unknown. We were about 10 miles outside of Toledo, Washington. By then, Jerusalem said, "Pull over here and we'll get out and don't look back." So I pulled over, let them out, and of course, as I pulled away, I looked back to see them grow back to about their 10-ish feet or so in height, and then vanish. Damn, dude. See, that's like double verification. See, if the first time you're like, maybe you're hallucinating or something like that, but then on the second time you see them grow and then vanish. Later, the next year, in a total accident, I was pinned inside my Super Beetle on a bridge over a river with no way out, and not knowing how to swim, I was lifted out of the window and flown out over the river. I was set down in front of my car, and the driver took me to the hospital. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm just a man," I replied. "It's all that any of us can be." And that's pretty much the end of that particular story. I find that fascinating. I find it, really interesting, especially since it's related to aliens as opposed to like, something like Resurrection Mary in Chicago or some of these other encounters. There's another one, another encounter here that I might be able to get to later on today. But I think that these encounters really happen, and these people, people, entities, aliens are really alive and they're really engaging with us. And I think that we need to acknowledge that. And I think that it's really cool when you think about how people have time slips with these ghosts. They might time slip into another dimension, or another time period. I shouldn't say dimension, like another time period. They might time slip into a time period of the 1920s. When there's cobblestone streets versus paved streets. They might time travel into the future as well and give somebody a ride. There's lots of different stories that have these different encounters, so we can explore these because I think that it might lend itself to our understanding of the world and time and how it plays a role in how we experience life. What do you think these aliens were trying to accomplish? Were they trying to warn him? Were they trying to protect him? Do they really need a ride? I mean, they're aliens, for gosh sakes. Didn't they have a UFO? Maybe they crashed their UFO and they were out searching for something and they just happened to come across this guy and they said, "Hey, we need a ride back. Let's hitch a ride with this guy in his Beetle." They couldn't have picked a guy in a Suburban, right? They had to pick a guy in a Beetle. So I'll leave it at that. But six fingers really makes you think it's an alien, and the fact that they were able to shrink and resize themselves after getting out of the Beetle is also interesting as well. And they were predictive, almost to the exact number of how many people died on Mount Helen. So, interesting story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna pull up another story to bring it to you, and we'll keep going on this little trip. I think that there's a lot to explore. So I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, following through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams, and as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves and Lockdown Universe out. Peace.